Hello and welcome everybody to some more Dota 2 action. I'm at Lyrical Dota, joined today by Daniel Cass as well as Corrupt Drop Bear on the stats. We're all looking forward to this game 2 of Phoenix versus First Departure in the BTS series. This is going to be Southeast Asian Dota. Hope you guys are all looking forward to it. We saw a very entertaining game 1 where First Departure didn't have an Omni Knight for the first 2 minutes of the game. Then he came back and started running a train on everybody, looking very strong. Danny, what are you looking forward to in this game?
So this game, for First Departure fans, obviously going to be looking towards that miracle hero. For people that are rooting for Phoenix, I think we need to see a little bit more of this team before we could really define what kind of a team they are. Now, for people that do already know who some of these players are, for people that don't, some of these are ex-Mineski players. So some of the names may seem familiar. They aren't really... We haven't really seen too much of the players in general. But for Phoenix... I don't know. I feel like there's not that much synergy between the team as of yet. It feels like there was a couple of miscommunications during the previous game where they could have made certain plays happen, but just didn't because they didn't really synergize that well as a team. I think it's just they're going to eventually mesh well together, but they need more games under their belt. And it depends if they're going to be able to get that happening in this game, or if not, as you said, they're going to be knocked out of this
Yeah.
single elimination.
That's true. They
So I
will be
think
knocked out. Yeah. The other thing I want to sort of piggyback off of that a little bit. It looked to me not only like there was a little bit of sort of not communicating as effectively, but also a bit of a lack of leadership maybe in game. There were a couple of moments where it felt like if there would have been a call that would have been made definitively, like, all right, we're going to fight this or we're not going to fight this, a little bit of indecision at various points. Also not sort of responding effectively at various points with TP rotations. There were a couple of times where people didn't have TPs, but also a couple of times where they did and just didn't end up moving on down there. And maybe that was the call that they said, you know what, we're not going to fight this. You're dead. You're on your own. Or maybe it was just one of those moments where people didn't end up sort of calling it out and then responding well enough. But it felt like in the draft, at least, they had sort of a clear objective that they were trying to chase.
Absolutely, I agree with you there, but the game and the draft, they're two separate things. So if
Totally.
you can have an amazing draft, which is great, but if you can't execute the draft, then that's a completely different problem on its own. And I think for Phoenix, it was just an executional error for them to not get their draft off the ground. But aside from that, that was game one. We're now in game two. Fresh start, fresh page. Let's see if Phoenix can come back. Going to be starting off with their first pick, Undying. Typically, I don't like the hero in general. He's not as strong as he used to be. He does have some good scaling if he can get an Aghanim Scepter. But until then, I feel like Undying, his early game is a little bit weaker than it used to be, but he's still a very, very valuable hero. So just nice to have that under their belt.
Definitely. I do feel like sometimes people play him a lot more often. At least recently, we've been seeing him in the 5 position, which I don't like either. And I think that that's part of the reason that he's sort of fallen off a bit. Because I think that really he can be a solid offlane hero still. But the problem, like you mentioned there, is of course just the tombstone being taken out, and how do you deal with that? And sometimes you end up seeing teams go for these illusion-based lineups, and all of a sudden you end up getting your tombstone deleted immediately, and that's something that I think might need to end up changing with the hero. Of course, decay is still such a strong skill, and the other thing is that when people play him in a 4 position, sometimes they get multiple points in Soul Rope to get down that cooldown and play him as a defensive support. But I think that him as a defensive support really doesn't do enough. Like, he kind of can heal you, but it requires a lot of different things to be going right simultaneously. And when you compare him to a hero like Dazzle, I just feel like you get so much more out of it. But of course, if you are trying to run something aggressive, he can be a very strong component of those drafts, particularly if you have other heroes around him that create a lot of space. You know, you think something like a Tusk there, for instance, which has been banned out, of course. You drop down the tombstone, and then you end up snowballing into several heroes, stun them up for a little bit, get a couple of zombies that are sort of creeping around everywhere, and to me that feels like a very strong point. But as of yet, we're going to be seeing the Dazzle Spirit Breaker that are going to be picked on up at this point in time for First Departure. And still a couple of the big heroes left in as we end up seeing Phoenix take Queen of Pain.
So Phoenix this time going to secure themselves the Queen of Pain. So it may lock them into that mid Queen of Pain, which means that they have some solid early to mid game momentum once the Queen of Pain does hit that level 6. So hopefully for Phoenix, they can get that Queen of Pain online as early as possible. Whereas the First Departure, if you draft a Spirit Breaker, you know it's going to be aggression galore. So knowing them, they're going to be going for very aggressive heroes. Now, they're going to be playing up against a
10
Undying.
seconds remaining.
Dazzle and Spirit Breaker, not the best when it comes to dealing with the Tombstone, but with the
5
sustain that
seconds
the Dazzle
remaining.
has, I think they should be okay and well equipped with dealing with this Undying. First departure,
Reserve
at
time.
this point, their draft is so open, they could go for anything. Whereas for Phoenix, they've secured a potentially a mid or an off lane with
Dire
the Queen of
team
Pain.
ban.
Undying, would you say he would still be in the supporting role this game, or would you have to bump him up into a core role this game?
I think that they are going to probably base it off of what the rest of these next couple of bands look like. I think that if you're able to get a
10
space
seconds
creating
remaining.
offlaner and also maybe a team
5
fight
seconds
safe
remaining.
lane, maybe something again like you end up seeing that Phantom Assassin. I don't imagine that's what we're going to be seeing, or maybe a
Reserve
Sven or
time.
something. Then you can run the Undying as one of the sort of the support positions. I think that if you end up trying to pick up here, it
Radiant
really depends on
team
how they
ban.
want to run it. I think that I would rather see it run in a core role, but
Radiant
I
team
don't believe
pick.
that's what Phoenix are going to be doing. Now, we do also have a Tinker ban out. That one's a little bit strange in my estimation. Maybe a little bit of inside knowledge about what these different teams are looking for, and they're just afraid of that split pushing combo that you potentially have. And
Dire
with this
team
lineup
pick.
now, actually, I'm kind of concerned for Phoenix because if they're banning on out these split pushing heroes in the Tinker, although it is a little bit strange that they ban out the Huskar, and then they take a Disruptor, to me that says they want to start going aggro, and then you can start, pushing on down towers, and when you end up having TP rotation, you just glimpse people back to where they came from.
Yeah, absolutely. So for first departure, they've got, as you said, two very solid supports to work with. They have a
10
Spirit Breaker for
seconds
their
remaining.
off-lane aggression, but this means that Dazzle and Disruptor, this may
5
end up being
seconds
a safe lane
remaining.
tri-lane,
Hmm.
and that's a favorable position if you're an Undying, because a Undying plus
Reserve
one does
time.
generally very well up against tri-lanes. They can potentially get kills, so it could be a very, very good situation for Phoenix, who looks like they're going
Radiant
to be going
team
into
pick.
the Tiny Wisp combo here.
Hmm.
Disruptor was picked up before the Wisp pickup though, so this is very interesting. But for C teams, it's not uncommon for them to go back to that tiny Wisp if they feel like they're in a position where they have to win that game. So if it's tiny, it's tiny. Unless Phoenix picks up something really different, but I don't think so. I think tiny's just the better pick in general.
10
Definitely.
seconds remaining.
Well, and then that might give you an ability now to run the Queen of Pain in the safe lane,
5
and then if you end
seconds
up doing
remaining.
that, you can bring another hero down there for the dual off lane with the Undying. To me, that seems like a strong
Reserve
combo
time.
if they wanted to do that, because, of course, if you did end up wanting to run a dual off lane with Undying, that leaves your other lanes a little bit weaker. You end up drafting the Queen of Pain, getting, the rest of the side of First Departure, thinking that that's going to go mid, and then you sort of shift things up a little bit. Now it's going to be a Queen of Pain against the Spirit Breaker, hypothetically. I think that that actually is kind of a nice little dynamic of the draft here if Phoenix end up going for that. Of course, the other thing is this doesn't necessarily limit you. So if they end up First Departure taking Tiny here, you can always run another hero in the mid lane with the IO. You could run something like a Bristleback potentially, and then all of a sudden now where are you going to throw this Tiny? You're going to end up putting him in the safe lane where you have an Undying going up against him. You're able to sap away his strength with Decay, but then if you end up putting him in the mid lane, now you're running a Tiny with a potentially Bristleback IO combo or some other hero like that. It feels like there's a lot of great answers here to anything that First Departure try and do to counter this pick here, and they end up going for the Gyrocopter.
Gyrocopter. So this is fine. It's one of the
Radiant
more
team
solid
ban.
carries that they could work with. So it kind of feels. Did it feel like Phoenix backed First Departure into a corner with this tiny Wisp pickup?
Yeah, that's kind of what it seems like to me. And I also, well, Gyrocopter gives you the potential to fight early, and I
10
think it's in
seconds
general a
remaining.
good answer to Tiny, just because you don't necessarily have to rely upon your
5
right clicks to
seconds
kill him in
remaining.
the early game, or rather in the mid game. Once there's Craggy Exterior up, you can just sort of rely more
Reserve
upon your,
time.
Rocket Barrage and Call Down and all that stuff. He is vulnerable to the burst damage that comes out. They have a Dazzle, so Dazzle's going to need to be really, really on point with these Graves. But I think that I really like the fact that for here, you have Phoenix in a position where you have a lot of burst damage out at the very start. You've got Queen of Pain with the
10
Sonic Wave,
seconds
Tiny with
remaining.
the Avatos, and that's what you need against Dazzle. The ability to sort of either one,
Dire
take
team
out a
ban.
hero quickly before he's able to grave, or simultaneously switch it up and after he graves somebody, switch over to the Dazzle. So I like the draft a lot by Phoenix. That being said, I like their draft last game, and I felt like they just weren't able to execute it enough. So hopefully this time that ends up happening, and they're able
10
to
seconds
take this
remaining.
to a game 3.
Absolutely. So the final ban here for Festa Part is going to be the Bounty Hunter, which I feel like would have been a very nice pickup here for Phoenix. Add some extra aggression, especially during the laning phase if you have a roaming Bounty Hunter, which is now not going to be available for Phoenix. Final ban for them. Now for Festa Departure, it seems like they're looking for either a mid or a safe lane hero. As I've seen some teams play a gyrocopter in the mid lane up against the Tiny Wisp, as you said. He does generally okay, and if the Dazzle's there, he'll be fine as well.
Hmm.
Unless they go back for something else, as you said, maybe a Bristleback pickup to go against the Tiny Wisp, who knows. Whereas for Phoenix, their final pickup, they could really go for anything, honestly. Their draft is so versatile at this point. They can have the core Undying to support Undying, Queen of Pain that could be going into an off lane, or the safe lane, as you said. So I think for Phoenix, there's no real defined hero for them to go for. Shadow Fiend final ban for Phoenix. Final pick here for First Departure.
Yeah.
Now, of all the heroes here, none of these feel like a miracle hero. So it feels like this last pickup might be the miracle hero unless he plays Gyrocopter. And you know Miracle.
Yeah, definitely. He could be doing that. I'm a little bit curious now. Also, they end up going for the Magnus. This is putting a lot of eggs in his basket yet again. It ended up working out for him last time. But they don't have that natural synergy with another hero to sort of empower up to be getting a lot of damage. I'm wondering if this is going to be even sort of a DPS Magnus potentially, or a farming Magnus.
It might just have to be a pseudo DPS Magnus because Spirit Breaker, you know this hero doesn't really do damage. Is there purely for utility? Both supports are pure utility based heroes. So Magnus and Gyrocopter, the synergy is going to be there. The Gyrocopter is still going to benefit from the Empower. It's just that it's only going to help him with the flat cannon and also just his basic physical right click. So the cleave, it's not going to help him there, but it's still useful. So the idea is there for First Departure. It can work out. Final pick here for Phoenix is going to be a Earthshaker, played by yours truly, who he played off lane. This is an off lane Earthshaker?
I guess
Seems
so.
like it.
A very, very interesting setup here. I'm wondering now if this is just going to end up being something. I don't know what's going on. Maybe they end up running a defensive tri-lane with Tiny, and then they end up throwing the Queen of Pain in the mid lane. We're going to have another pause here, unfortunately, which has sort of become a staple so far in the short tournament that we've been a part of. But it's actually kind of good that we have this because there's a couple other things that are important to keep in mind here. I was looking at Phoenix's draft, and the one thing they did definitely lack was stuns, and that's something that Earthshaker has in abundance. So I like the pickup. The laning stage is really going to be the issue to try and figure out where they run this, and maybe what they're going to end up doing is having sort of a defensive tri-lane here with the Tiny. I do believe that it was Purpose last time that was playing the DK, so maybe it is actually going to be mid. Purpose was the mid player last time, so
Yes.
they're going to be going mid with him, and then I guess throwing Earthshaker Undying together, maybe.
Undying Earth, I can definitely see that happening though. They do have kill potential with these heroes because First Departure is still running generally squishy heroes. So once you get the catch onto them, you either should be able to kill them off or at least drop them low and send them back. That's still an advantage for Phoenix. If they don't kill anyone, as long as they're getting their levels, I think that's the major thing for Phoenix. Just get their levels, and if they can get that early Blink Dagger onto the Earthshaker, then that's great. You're going to have even more initiation on your side, and that's more power to Phoenix. So we'll see how these drafts work out. And Miracle Magnus, we all know what we're going to be expecting with this.
Totally. He's a player, that's for sure. As we see everybody move on out here to the side, looking like they're probably going to be in a position to be trading off runes. Maybe Earthshaker gets a little bit too fresh down here in the bottom lane and gets caught out. We do always have the Disruptor there who can throw out a glimpse if things get a little bit dicey and wants to bring on back that hero. But regardless, it's going to be an interesting game. It does look like they're going to be leaving the Earthshaker solo in the off lane. Oh god, this could be really bad here actually. I think Earthshaker is going to run on in, ends up spotting them maybe? I'm not sure if he quite had vision. He might end up seeing them as he's running away, but they're not going to be able to get into vision to be able to glimpse him on back, unfortunately, as Earthshaker ends up heading on out of there, and they're just going to be trading off runes here. But yeah, I'm curious about where the damage is going to be for First Departure. It definitely feels like they're going to need something, either a lot of farm on this Gyrocopter, or Magnus to start to go for a lot of deeps.
So I think at this point, just going to have to keep an eye on Miracle's build, whereas for Phoenix, we know they didn't play that well last game. Let's see if they can get their act together. Maybe they're going to be able to impress us with this Tiny Wisp pickup. Might be It might be what can bring this into a game 3 scenario, which is the most favorable position to be if you're a Phoenix. You drop game 1, you need to come back into game 2 to have that extra chance. And chances, I think at this point, this is their last chance.
Definitely. Well, time will tell indeed. I do have to say again, I love the warding here by Phoenix, placing this up on this high ground. This is going to protect your Tiny from potential early charges in by the Spirit Breaker. It also gives him a pretty good vision if anybody's going to be in the area to try and come on in and help out for a gank in the mid lane. As we do see Disruptor hang on out here in the mid area and just going to tossing out those Thunder Strikes. God, that ability is so frustrating to play against since it ended up getting changes to all that extra damage. There's an Avalanche tossed on out, and they are not afraid to get aggressive here early in the mid lane.
And the thing is also with Miracles, he's only running 2 Shed Tango, so he doesn't really have too much regen to work with yet. So there's a small opening for them to kill him before this bottle arrives on the courier. But it looks like he'll be fine up until that point. So no kill on to Miracle. He now has Sustain in that mid lane, which is probably going to be the biggest thing for him. Just Sustain, get that level 6 early blink, and then from that point on, he needs to make things happen. Same could be said for Phoenix on this Tiny Wisp. Either get a blink or get that early Aghanim Scepter. For purpose, would you honestly look into maybe getting an early blink dagger on the Tiny so he has that extra mobility to work with and not have to completely rely on the Wisp, or would he have to go straight for an Ags this game? I think if he can get a little bit of momentum, maybe he could go for the blink build first into the Aghanim Scepter.
I think that would be really strong. You don't see as much here, at least, the need for the crazy high damage right off the bat from him, because you have that Queen of Pain that you can sort of rely upon for your early damage, as we do end up seeing another little Avatos combo. Looking for the potential for a skewer, not going to be able to find it this time around. The Magnus, as he ends up having to back on out of there. But I think particularly if you compare the sort of damage output, you really don't need to sort of accelerate that quickly here for Phoenix. You can do it if you want to, but I think that probably being able to just have that early burst combo is more important and have it exactly where you want it. Because while you can get into position with the IO Tiny, you're going to be able to get that maximum, full length damage from both your Avalanche as well as your toss, and getting the extra damage on the fall. It just all ends up working together perfectly. And against the Gyrocopter, that's so key to being able to take him out of the fight before he ends up casting off those spells and having that almost instantaneous initiation. I'll also mention here with the Undying, he was able to really harass away this Spirit Breaker. He's been having a tough time in lane, and I don't know how well this Spirit Breaker is going to be able to scale into the later stages. They've been able to harass him at least a decent amount at this point. They haven't denied him as much levels as you would have thought, actually. I thought that it was going a lot better, but he is actually already level 3. I'm curious if they're going to try and pressure this top tower once he ends up leaving the lane to try and gank.
They don't really have the best tower push though. It's just a Queen of Pain who can chip away at the tower, but for them to get the tower, the Spirit Breaker is going to have to leave the lane for prolonged amounts of time. And that's not going to happen up until maybe when he hits that level 6, when he gets the Nether Strike, then he'll feel comfortable trying to move around. Although they lose the Dazzle in the process, and Earthshaker being chased up by the Gyro. They will be able to finish him off there, but here comes the Blink in Queen of Pain. They're going to try and finish off the Gyro, but unfortunately, Gyro gets First Blood. So even though Queen of Pain gets a counter kill, is it really worth it to dive that far? I guess it's First Blood still on the Gyro.
Yeah, they end up also taking out the Dazzle, so he lost a little bit of experience while they were trying to dive there deep underneath the tower, not quite able to handle the aggro switch. So first departure end up losing somebody. They also end up moving the Queen of Pain down to the bot lane, so she's going to have to take a really long walk back over to the top side here. This is going to give a good amount of experience to the Undying, but it's going to also get trapped on up here. That's going to be a good amount of damage coming out very quickly, pushes him out of the kinetic field. One more bash is all that they're going to need. The right click is going to finish him off, and they're going to be able to get the Tomb Bounty, and unfortunately because of that rotation, you're not going to be able to see the Queen of Pain get back here for any type of counter kills. So all of a sudden what ended up looking a little bit sketchy for first departure in terms of that dive ends up turning into a kill on the support for the offlane.
So they end up getting more kills than they actually bargained for. Very good plays coming out from first departure, just to take advantage of that kind of play. There is going to be a haste rune spotted out by the Earthshaker. Might get picked up either Wisp, and it looks like they will, or is it going to be on the Earthshaker? They could use this to help the Earthshaker with the play, but it seems that they are going to be giving this to JYC on the Wisp. So fill up the bottle, keep farming in the mid lane. Miracle's not doing too bad for CS, but he's not having an amazing lane. He's not getting kills, he's getting some sort of CS. Do you think this is a comfortable position to be if you're a Magnus?
Yes and no. Like, the problem that I really see with this is, even once he gets level 6, and even once he ends up getting a pretty decent Blink Dagger timing, which I think he will, it's still going to be so hard to find any type of kills, even with a rotation from a Spirit Breaker, just because they don't have a ton of damage in the early stages. I think that probably if you charge on through the sort of combo of the Tiny Wisp, then you're going to be able, with a call down coming in there, you're going to be able to find it, but it's a lot to ask. And it takes a lot of rotations and everything to go right. So maybe it is, as they end up trying to toss on back the Magnus, not quite able to find that. But it's just a really big ask. As I said, yours truly is going to get dove here again in the bottom lane. And after the Fissure ends up getting committed for that one, he's going to have to hide over in the trees, at least for the second, and ends up TPing out of here, not wanting to potentially get caught out as he goes just back to his tier 1 tower.
You can say to a certain degree a tiny little win there for yours truly, not to die but to also force out a teleport scroll, so if any ganks happen, Gyro's not going to have that available to help his teammates out. So to a certain degree you could say a tiny win. But the laning phase for the moment, it continues. Queen of Pain in this top lane, who did rotate a little bit earlier, is doing very well for CS. 27 CS compared to the 13 of a Spirit Breaker, but it's a Spirit Breaker. You're not really expected to get any sort of CS. He'll be moving into the mid lane. He's getting ready for a charge though, but the priority target here would be the Wisp, but with the Tiny there, it's a little bit sketchy on when you really want to go.
Yeah, definitely, and not really a great opportunity to make that happen, as you do have a couple of illusions scouting on out the area here. I don't know, did he... I think that they might have taken away the rune there. The Dazzle ended up snaking it away from the Wisp, so Tiny going to be without Wisp for at least a second or two here. This might be an opportunity with Disruptor coming on into the area for them to try and take advantage of him not being there. It's kind of, again, a little bit difficult considering the Tiny's been playing a little bit further back now, but maybe a charge on in there could be a possibility. It doesn't look like they're going to end up going for it, though. Just wanting to get a couple more of these levels, waiting for Spirit Breaker to get level 6, which he's very close to, and that makes him a lot more potent of a threat in terms of being able to gank and make these kills happen, as we do end up seeing IOTP back in and top one off the Tiny. Fairly large stacks here also. Stacks on the hard camp for the Radiant. That's going to probably be able to get Tiny his Blink Dagger, or excuse me, Magnus his Blink Dagger once they end up finishing it off, or at least pretty close to it.
Yeah, and with the Blink Dagger, I think that's when you're going to have to start seeing First Departure make the plays. They cannot sit back and let Phoenix just continue on farming, because their draft, as you said, during the early game, or during the draft really, they're very explosive. And if you can give them any sort of ammo, obviously they're going to make things happen. They're going to make fireworks. So for First Departure, they need to come online as soon as possible, and to make things happen, to not just slow down Phoenix's progression, but to also speed up their own progression. Because they're not relying on just the Gyrocopter to be the late game carry, but they also need Miracle to come online as a hero as well. And I think to a certain degree, you can also say Cal is going to be a key component in this, because he still benefits from the Empower, because it's melee. Even though Spirit Breaker doesn't normally do too much damage, he is going to be a key component in not just disrupting, but also hopefully contributing to that damage output. I think one of the biggest things here for First Departure as well is to get that level 6 as soon as they can on the Disruptor, because if you can get a key static storm off in the middle of the fights, it might just be enough to disrupt Phoenix's draft and have a bit of an opening for First Departure to really go in there and hit the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, definitely. A couple of weird moves here in the last couple of minutes. We ended up seeing Miracle move down to the bottom lane, cancel RP, and then head on into the jungle to try and farm up a little bit more. Also going to have a Spirit Breaker charge here on top of the IO. They're moving on in to try and take stacks. The call down is not going to hit on anything, and they cancel their charge as they move on there through the jungle, and that's going to be, at least for a second, a win for Phoenix. Going to be able to bait that out. They've been doing a good job of just avoiding these ganks this time around. It seemed like maybe last game there were some nerves coming in. Again, this is the first game that these teams have played, or rather Phoenix has played in officials in just over a month, since I think the Frankfurt Major qualifiers were the last set that they ended up playing. And this game they're looking a lot better. I'm really enjoying what they've been able to do so far, sort of keeping it relatively even against the squad that was very much favored over them. 1,000 goal experience lead is the only thing that's really into the favor of First Departure at this point. And considering that, you know, there's a draft here that out of Phoenix, you would kind of expect them to be trying to go for a bit of maybe into the late game with a lot of bursty type damage. I think that they're in a pretty good position to keep on going from here.
Yep. So Blink Dagger has been finally secured on the Magnus, so we'll see if they can make anything happen, as he also is going to be picking up a smoke. for first departure, are they actually waiting for any other items? Because if there's nothing else that they're waiting for, then they're going to have to start making their moves happen now.
Yeah.
They've got no level 6 on Disruptor, which I think is, as we said before, going to be a key component. Dazzle, I think at this point he's fine, doesn't really need to wait for anything.
This is
I
the
think at
moment
this
right here, I think.
can they
Jumping
make it
forward,
happen?
another
Oh.
strike down on top of the Queen of Pain. There's the skewer, everything else that's committed. Tombstone is down. This is going to also be a relocate on the other side. Magnus ends up getting Avatos, does end up using the RP, ends up getting healed by the Shallow Grave as well, keeping him alive at least for the moment. The relocate was committed. Does look like they're maybe going to be able to take on out the IO. If they're able to get these kills here, this is going to be huge. There's a call down on top of two. It does look like they're going to be able to take on out the Tiny. Rocket Barrage can come out in a second. Nice heal, keeping him alive a little bit longer there with the stick charges, and that's going to end up being a dead Undying. Thankfully, the Haste Rune ends up respawning 20 seconds earlier, and that's going to be Tiny getting out of there. But a really nice combination there as Phoenix are able to get thrown back, at least for the moment, by first departure. Really, really well played there by them.
Very nice reinforcement coming out from first departure, and also just a bit of a lack of burst damage from Phoenix. If they had enough to burst down the Magnus before he got the RP off, then I think Phoenix would have been golden. But because Mikasa was able to survive for that little bit extra, he was able to set up for the rest of his team, and from that point on, just really shut down Phoenix's movement. So the first relocate, not very successful here for Phoenix. They get most of their heroes killed off. Obviously, Purpose didn't die, so that's, I think, the major thing with the relocate. As long as they don't lose the Tiny, it's not bad, but it's not good for them either. So for Phoenix, still going to be looking for those relocates, it seems, whereas their first departure, they've got all their items, they still need a couple of levels, but from that point on, are they still waiting for anything? Because they're still sort of laning this out. They're not rotating aggressively. They're not putting out any sort of aggressive wards aside from just the one on the high ground here. So it seems like they're sort of gearing themselves up for more of a mid to maybe late game scenario with the Gyro Magnus. They don't really want to fight Phoenix right now.
Well, maybe this is the other part of it, is that we ended up talking about the need for another form of damage. As we do end up having to relocate over here, they're going to connect too with the Static Storm. There's the charge on through. Io is going to go down, and now looks like Purpose is as well. He ends up tossing him on back. That kills off the Disruptor, unfortunately, but the charge is going to be committed, and Spirit Breaker ends up getting that kill. I'm wondering now, honestly, if maybe what we're seeing here out of Phoenix is that, or out of the first departure Phoenix matchup, is that they're concerned about facing off against first departure in the late game, and because of that, they're a little bit more okay going to the late game. I'm not exactly sure. It does seem very strange because Phoenix keep on sort of throwing their heads into first departure's, top lane here, and they really haven't been able to convert on too many kills off the end of it. Like, we're seeing a pretty decent advantage now being built up by first departure, and it's been off of counter initiations, which is something that's surprising to me. I totally would have thought that Phoenix would have been the ones that were trying to be more aggressive, as we are going to see Earthshaker get jumped on here. Not going to be able to blake that one off. They're going to glimpse on back, propose over to the other side. Now Tiny's going to be out of here for this fight, and they end up getting another kill.
And then Tiny has to walk all the way back out to lane as well. The most annoying thing for Purpose. Now, I'm not too sure if you noticed this. He's picked up a Midas.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, he's still going to come online at a decent timing, but this means that he's not going to be as strong as their Tiny typically would if he had a Blink Dagger at this timing, or maybe even components for his Ags. So we're going to be seeing a little bit more farm coming out from Purpose. Will this hurt the Tiny's progression? I feel like at this point, it's gonna hurt Phoenix a little bit, but how much is this going to hurt?
Well, I think it's, again, very strange situation, as we do end up seeing a jump here potentially by the Queen of Pain, thinking about going on top of the Dazzle. If they wanted to, there is this possibility. But I think we're going to see a Fissure in a second try and connect onto here, but I don't think that they're going to be able to find it. Yeah, they're just going to back on out. Call down now committed for this one. They're going to be jumping in the middle of them, as we did end up seeing everybody caught out. Sonic Wave, how are they so low? 20 HP on the Gyrocopter. He is finally going to fall. Looks like Disruptor's going to get out of there, but already the Tiny and Whisper dead. Like, this is just such a weird game, and I'll talk about it in a second, as you do see another charge on top of the Queen of Pain. That's going to be a kill. Undying is going to go down also. They end up using the Shallow Grave, keeping him alive a little bit longer, and it looks like Yours Truly is soon to fall also, as one last Shockwave comes through. Alright, you're going for this late game draft. You've got Tiny IO, you've got, a Queen of Pain who scales pretty well into the late game, and you're facing off against what is essentially one hard carry core in the Gyrocopter, and then a Magnus who's sort of more of a utility hero, and you're trying to press your advantage when you already have a Midas. To me, it just doesn't make sense. It feels to me like if they're going to be going for this Midas, they would have ended up wanting to try and really delay out the damage, because this is 2,000 gold that's essentially just sitting there doing nothing. It totally, to me, feels like if you're going to be going for early aggression and trying to dive behind the same tier 1 tower 3 times in a row, you want to sort of get a fighting item as opposed to a Midas. I'm not sure if there was a lack of or some communication things going on there or what, but apparently we're also going to see a Midas picked up on Spearbreaker, so whatever, that's fine. And a 4-staff up on Magnus.
There's nothing wrong with the Midas on Cal though.
Yeah.
This hero benefits from a Midas because you get the extra attack speed for greater bashes. So I think for Cal it's fine, but for the Tiny, as you said, I don't think they're forced into a position to consistently fight, because remember, Tiny Whispers, they're not just good at team fights, they're not just good at relocating, they're good at split pushing as well.
Totally.
And you look at the towers in First Departure, all of their towers are intact. Mid lane, unfortunately, they get a kill on Tahiti's, so this is some good news for First Departure. For Phoenix, in the meantime, though, they're losing their momentum at this game altogether. So, yeah. I don't know what Phoenix really do. I think they have to change their mindset. Just stop trying to confront First Departure. Go for the more split push oriented style of Tiny Wisp, and then bring it into the late game scenario from that point. Because First Departure's late game, it's okay, but it's not amazing. I guess the only time it'll ever be amazing is once you get to double RP. But I don't think Miracle's going to be going in that direction. He has still gone for the utility the utility Magnus. So we could still see the really early refresher on the mag.
Yeah. I agree with you that I don't think that they should be forced into this, and I don't think that they are really forced into it, but for some reason they're still doing it, which is just slightly strange to me. But if that's what they feel like they want to do, they definitely know Dota a heck of a lot better than I do, so can't really flame them too much for it. It seems very odd to me, the choices that they've ended up making this game with the sort of items and then simultaneously the play style that they've been taking. But regardless, they are going to be able to take another tower here as another Midas Gaming coming on up. It's actually been a lot of Midases here as they're looking for an RP on top of this Tiny Wisp here. They do have the charge forward. Earthshaker is here as well. All 4 heroes in the area. If they grew up, he is going to be looking for this opportunity. They're all together right now. There's the RP, followed up by the Skewer, probably going to be over to the other side. They don't end up catching the Earthshaker into this. Io is really, really low. Echo Slam now committed. There's going to be a shallow grave on top of the Spearbreaker. That kills off the Io as he ends up nether striking forward into them. Is going to end up dying in the end. Unfortunately, trades his life for the Io, and this is kind of a bit of a problem, is that you do end up having this great opportunity for a huge RP, but there isn't any follow-up, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was very surprised that First Departure decided to go for a play like that, because when you don't have the damage for it, it's great you have the position, but where's the follow-up? So the combination for First Departure, it just wasn't quite there. They got a kill, but I think losing the Spirit Breaker hurts more than just losing a Wisp for Phoenix, because it was also a kill streak.
Yeah, definitely. It was a good amount of gold going back their direction. So First Departure now, a couple of kills going back the side of Phoenix are going to drop down to a 2,500 net worth lead as well as 5,000 experience. Key items that are coming up, we have seen a couple of them that are starting to show. It looks like at this point in time, Spearbreaker might be going for, he's got an Ogre Club. Normally you don't end up seeing something like a BKB that early on the hero, but could also be maybe into a Halberd at some point in time, going into that utility role potentially. But the Aghanim Scepter going to be up for the Tiny. So that's going to be a nice little part of this. He is the top of the net worth so far, but has died 2 times also. I guess that's the other nice part, is he did get out of that one gank that came forward with the Haste Rune. But now he's probably just going to try and farm on up a little bit more throughout the whole course of this, as yours truly continues to build his way towards his Blink Dagger, only at this point about 300 gold from finishing that off.
Okay, so now I think this is when First Departure is going to run into a bit of issues where they're going to start running out of damage, because Tiny is hitting quite hard, but he's also extremely tanky. The glimpses there, the team, are they going to be able to keep Purpose alive? Look at the damage being done to him. Is the Wisp going to be able to keep him alive? Gets relocated out. Tiny will get out safely. 2 are dead for First Departure. They're hanging around there. They've got their eyes set on Queen of Pain, but the damage is not there. Mikasa sitting in the tree line. He has reverse polarity, but damage, I don't think this is going to be worth it. He's still hanging around though. Oh, Miracle, just back out. Don't even bother looking at this. Just don't do it.
He doesn't have a TP scroll. I think that they're going to be able to get here too little too late. It's going to be running away from there. They end up spotting out the Magnus with the Spirits, I think. He needs to be careful right now. Charging on through. Spirit Breaker's in the middle of all of them. Jumps on top of the Io. There's going to be a Shockwave coming out. Nice tether away. The Io's been playing beautifully so far. A nice amount of damage on top of the Spirit Breaker. And now they're going to be able to find out the Magnus as well. There's the Yule Scepter on up. That's going to be connected. Nice Force Staff keeping him alive a little bit longer. Trying to skewer away. Stunned in the middle of the skewer, but they're still chasing after him. I don't know if they're going to be able to get here in time to keep him alive. The rest of the whole side of First Departure is trying to come on over here and help on out the Magnus, but he's dropping pretty low, 250 HP on him currently, and now they're going to be able to break on these off as well. Earn charge on top of the Magnus. He is going to go down, I believe, from that. Disruptor actually kills off the Io, commits the reverse polarity onto the Queen of Pain, trying to stay alive, but finally is going to go. Now Shirley is getting chased on over by the Gyrocopter. Is he going to be able to stay alive? Echo Slam committed. Nicely done there. I think that they're going to be able to turn this one back around now. First Departure might have overstayed their welcome. 4 dead with only the Io being taken out, and look at the fights continue on here. A huge comeback by Phoenix, 3,400 gold swing, as well as right around 4,000 experience. Oh my goodness. Last tick of Earn killing Magnus. What more could you ask for in this game?
That's a huge loss for First Departure. So firstly, they lose the team fight in the top lane. They lose their top T1 tower, which is a minor loss. It's not too bad. You lose heroes in the process, it happens. But then to drag the fight out for so long and to lose your heroes again in the mid lane and to lose not just a T2 tower, but also put the RP on cooldown, this is not the position you want to be if you're First Departure. I felt like they're sort of tilting, getting a little bit ahead of themselves, thinking that they're much further ahead than they actually are, getting caught off guard with how tanky and how much control there is on the side of Phoenix. And then from that point on, after everything is said and done, they look at everything that they've gained and lost, and you got to be hitting yourself against the wall at this point thinking, oh my god, what have we freaking done?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a bit of a dire situation at this point in time, and we've talked about the scalability of these heroes. I don't know how well First Departure scales against this lineup. You've got this Magnus who, well, obviously, yes, you're going to be able to make huge plays. Where's the damage follow-up? You need to be able to have your Gyrocopter there to really deal it out, and he's not hitting very hard at this point in time, and looks like he's... I think he kind of has to go for a Sanjin Yasha at this point, although that's going to leave him open to the have a toss combo that comes out from Tiny. So he kind of needs he needs so much farm right now, and he just doesn't have it. If you take a look right now, Tiny is 4,000 gold ahead of him. He's going to be picking up a AC here probably relatively shortly as he takes on out a 3 stack of Ancients, and probably soon after this Roshan. You need to be able to have the extra damage coming out from the right clicks of the gyro, and it doesn't look like it's going to be there. They smoke on up 4 heroes now. I think that this is probably going to be to go on into Roshan. I don't imagine, well, that's a little bit weird that they would smoke on up with the Io Tiny and then go on in to try and find a pick off. Normally you end up relocating in for those, but thinking instead that they're going to want to go for a pick. If they end up finding this initiation, this could be huge right here.
They just need vision though. Oh, they've got the vision down, so Undying gonna spot everything out with the ward. Now the initiation, there's Echo, only connects onto 2 though, but they get the Disruptor, and there's also gonna be the Grave and DKB on the Gyro, but he's gonna completely melt. And in the process that they get the Undying, which is okay. Can they finish off any more though? Wisp dropping very low, but he looks like he's gonna be okay. 2 dead for First Departure. There's even gonna be a tornado thrown out onto the poor Dazzle that just gets completely melted. Mikasa Craggy! Oh no, he gets craggied up and he's gonna die as well. And Cal coming in from the backside. He's trying to be the hero, but unfortunately the hero's gonna turn into a 0 as he will get picked off. And Phoenix, they lose 1, almost 2. But First Departure, they just cannot kill off Phoenix.
Oh
my god.
3,000 gold swing, 4,000 experience. That Craggy right there, because that was an RP. He was looking to go for it. I don't know if he had auto attack on or something, but he had RP up and I saw him click the button. I think he was going for the RP and just wasn't able to get it off there. And a huge full man team wipe. We're taking a look at this net worth change. In just over the course of 6 minutes, it's been 10,000 net worth swing. They do end up tossing on out the Thunderstrike now, wanting to keep everybody around so that way they don't end up getting Purpose dropped off for nothing. He still does not have an Aegis on him, so need to be a little bit careful. He's in the middle of everybody. Just look at the amount of damage he's able to dole out. Is going to get healed back up again by the Wisp. Just trying to keep his buddy alive. They throw out another Thunderstrike. That cooldown is so freaking low. There's the RP that they needed. This might be the moment, but the clutch Yules going to be able to keep him alive a little bit longer. Another stun coming out. That's going to be a jump forward. Are they going to be able to kill off the Tiny? He is so freaking tanky. He is finally going to go down. Unstoppable streak. 1,000 gold going back the direction direction of the Spirit Breaker, and now maybe going to be able to pick off another hero here. Jumping forward, the Queen of Pain doing the turnaround. 2 heroes are dead at this point in time, but they're able to kill her off also. Triple kill at this point for Kyle. He has been really the MVP so far, and it looks like they're going to be able to take out the Undying as well. A full team wipe in the end, and FD really needed that one. It did come at the cost of a buyback, though.
But that was all they needed. That was all First Departure needed. They needed to win a team fight. They got a huge win, and look at the gold. 4.6k gold going in the pockets of First Departure. That is huge. So that means that Gyrocopter, he's going to be getting his items. He's not getting too much, I suppose. Even though they're winning these team fights, Gyro himself is not getting enough gold to slowly start out-damaging the HP pool and regeneration from Phoenix. But it's still a step in the right direction for First Departure. And for Magnus, so for Mikasa, our Magnus, is he going to go for the Refresher Orb, or does he go for something like a Crystallis for extra damage? Because I feel like you can slowly wait out for Gyrocopter to do it, but I feel like at this point, Miracle has to start doing some of the damage too. They could try and wait for the Refresher, but then you're risking everything on a Gyro that might not be able to perform to what the team needs.
Well, yeah, I think that now they might be in a position where they went for a BKB on the Gyro, which kind of sucks because his damage output, again, is going to be a little bit lower. I'm waiting to see them go for the Empower on top of Gyro. Even though you don't end up getting the Cleave, obviously, you do get a little bit extra bonus damage, 50% actually, based off of what he ends up getting there from it. So that's fairly decent and pretty relevant. The other thing that we haven't seen as of yet this game is a Disruptor ulti on top of an RP. And if you end up dropping that down there, all of a sudden it doesn't matter a ton how much damage you're doing because you're keeping somebody stuck in a kinetic field, and that's pretty great. So I don't know if he necessarily has to go for it. If you get a little bit of extra disable there, being able to have, maybe 2 shots of the flat cannon off from the Gyrocopter, that could be enough damage. But it's going to be a big ask, and they are setting up here to jump on top of the IO. Tiny, but they end up getting out of there, relocating back last second, or I guess just TPing. How did they get out of there? Was that a relocate away?
Yes, they relocated up there.
Okay, got it.
No problem.
Well, AC finished on Tiny now, does also have that Hand of Midas, is bringing the courier on over to the secret shop, and it looks like Yule's Scepter recipe is on there. Wondering what his next item is going to be. We'll probably see what it is in just a second or two, but he can kind of go any way that he wants. I would love to see some more statty type things on him, just a bit more tankability potentially.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with going for a little bit of extra tank. So we're now 27 minutes into the game, closing in towards a 30-minute mark. Now, is there a timing window for Phoenix to really go for this heavy high ground push? Because they've already taken Roshan, they've got the Aegis on Tiny. I feel like the time to go is just now. They still have a T2 tower, so even though First Departure's up top, they can take a T2 tower, which is fine, but they're not going to be able to push anymore, and it looks like here we go. TPs are coming through as Phoenix going to try and go for high ground. How much damage will they do? Raxes are exposed as well. So First Departure, they need the initiation. And can Miracle get it? Shadowblade has been deployed. They're not going to expect it though. So Mikasa waiting in the wings. And the backslide. Here it catches onto one, unfortunately. And Gyrocopter, he's going to be graved up, going to be doing the damage. Look at everyone in the middle. They lose through the Phoenix, they lose the Wisp, Undying, and the Earthshaker. And now Cal going to try and man-fight Purpose, who even though he has the Aegis, Tiny by himself, he's really not that big of a threat, and all of a sudden going to continue on to chase after Queen of Pain with Cal getting the lucky bashes and Purpose. Wants to turn around his purpose in life now to try and win this fight, but it looks like unfortunately with too many heroes around, can he get out? Will he get kited? We'll have to see as Cal. He has his eyes fixated on Purpose. The charge is there. Mikasa chasing on after the Queen of Pain, who's still alive, still kiting up the Queen of Pain, but all of a sudden Purpose turns around, gets a kill onto the Spirit Breaker, too little too late. Oh, it's not too little too late. He's going to be able to get out with the Glimmer Cape. Yeah, I think Purpose getting a little bit too big here as he now turns around, and he's going to go onto the Raxes anyway.
Oh my goodness. That is craziness right now. Buyback on the Spirit Breaker. They need to get back in here as quickly as possible. He picked up that Reaver, and I think that was absolutely the correct option for him. And to Midasine a creep in the mid-swing right there as he turns back around. This is just the thing, though, is they're going to be able to kind of back around. There's the jump forward. Oh, the Echo Slam was not quite good enough, and the glimpse on back. Earthshaker is not going to be with them for the rest of this engagement. But Io is still here and might think about bringing on back the Tiny... it's going to be able to kill off the Magnus, actually. That's pretty huge as they they end up shooting on back there, and Purpose now separated yet again, but I don't know if they can take him out. Honestly, he has 3,000 HP right now, taking so little damage. Is going to BKB up on the gyrocopter, maybe going to be able to finish off the disruptor before he ends up going down, and no, there's going to be the shallow grave, keeping him alive a little bit longer. So I thought that he was going to be big, but still, you think about how that fight started. 4 heroes dead, or 3 heroes dead rather, and they end up having to force a buyback by the Spirit Breaker. That Tiny was just so tanky. They end up all dying, but they get the racks for it, and I think that that's almost worth it.
I think at this point, just taking the racks is a huge step forward for Phoenix, because for first departure, let's face it, their split push potential, or their pushing potential in general, is not that strong. Magnus can do decently well when it comes to pushing. Spirit Breaker needs help with the Magnus and power. Gyrocopter's okay because of flak. The supports are really bad in that department. So now that first departure has to continuously worry about a consistently pushing creep wave, they can't just go for any sort of plays. They can't go for 5-man smokes out of bases to try and get kills. They can't just take Roshan willy-nilly, because the creep wave is going to make things a little bit too obvious for Phoenix. So even though they lose their heroes, and I think that for Phoenix it's just a massive win to get the Raxes at this point, because it benefits them so greatly when playing up against first departure.
Well, and now also they're going to be able to start getting some items off of it. You know, the gold advantage starts swinging more and more into their favor as you take those objectives. Tiny is getting close to be able to finish off a Heart of Tarrasque, and honestly, I think that he's just going to go on into the jungle, finish that guy off, and now he's got so freaking much tank ability. First Heart on Tiny this patch. Interesting. That's kind of a neat little tidbit there. Not an item that often gets picked up. I feel like sometimes people want to go for the Satanic as well, just to be able to instead go for the sort of maximum, just getting up in your face and fighting build, but to be able to deal with the burst damage that comes out from the side of first departure, I think it makes sense. Also, we've been seeing this very long extended team fights. If you're able to step away for a couple of seconds there and get your heart regen coming back up again, all of a sudden you've got a fully HP'd hero in this Tiny yet again, who is now closing in on that 4,000 HP. And how are you going to kill him off? You have to take out the IO first, but if you're going to try and take out the IO, you're going to have to run through Tiny. This is just ridiculous, the amount of damage that they're going to be able to deal, and I don't know. I mean, you think about how the way that team fight went again last time, just about as worst it could, and Tiny was still able to endure throughout all of it. And that was like with the missed Echo Slam as well. It was just all, I don't know. I think this Tiny has gotten to almost an unkillable point.
I think he's unkillable now, but he's not going to be impossible to kill, because first departure is going to eventually get the damage. I think for now, first departure just has to either win the team fights, which will be ideal, but if you can't win the team fights, draw the game out. Make space, create time so that Gyro gets his items, so that Magnus is able to benefit both Spirit Breaker and Gyro, and then they can slowly start chipping through the Tiny. Because Phoenix's late game is all in purpose. If you kill the Tiny, there's not really that much damage follow-up aside from the Queen of Pain to a certain degree, and also the control for Phoenix. So purpose is a wall, but he can be broken, and first departure just needs time.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's true, definitely. It's going to be a late game for them to be able to really win this, though. I mean, you take a look at the map, it's still it's all of the tier 2 towers still up for Phoenix. Like, they're in a really good spot right now. The best part that I will say about First Departure and what they have going right now is that they have the elements to be able to build into the silver edges also to break through that craggy exterior, which I think is going to be really relevant, and you need to be able to make that happen to fight against him on Gyrocopter. I also like that the Tiny went for the heart yet again, because it's Gyrocopter already going for the MKB, and you didn't end up necessarily wanting to go for the butterfly into that, knowing that that might end up coming out. But just look at the damage that Purpose puts out here on this Tiny. He's so freaking strong with the overcharge coming out from the IO also. It's just so much damage. Oh, this could be a toss back. Not gonna be able to make it happen. There's gonna be a skewer forward. He's a little bit caught out at this point in time. Where's the rest of his team? That's going to be a Shallow Grave committed very early. Purpose starting to drop low, but they also have the Guardian Greaves up for him. Ewell Scepter picking on up there. Queen of Pain just trying to create that extra bit of separation. The Disruptor ulti's committed, but it's not going to hit onto anybody, as Purpose was just able to walk out of it. Now turning onto these towers. Nice Force Staff, keeping him alive by the Earthshaker. Well done there, charging in on top of the IO. That's going to be a relocate back, actually, but no, she's just going to be stuck here for a second, and it looks like they're going to continue to burst on down Purpose. He's still staying alive, though. So much tank ability, the Glimmer Cape, but he is finally going to fall. Raid boss down, as we do end up seeing the Spirit Breaker fall as well, and now they're going to have to content themselves with just the tier 3 tower taken, as the rest of Phoenix does not want to stick around without their Tiny.
Well, look at Miracle. He's coming in with this. He's got the Shadow Blade deployed. He's looking for a target, but all of a sudden gets spotted at glimpses there into Hehe's. It's just an Undying. Then Queen of Pain blinks forward, commits onto the Dazzle, who is able to get the Shallow Grave off. Is there anything to cancel the TP? Yes, there is. Nice enchant toner by yours truly. And the Courier, unfortunately, caught in the crossfire, can be taken down as well. We've got Miracle in the tree line though. He's looking for a ultimate, but there's no one to really do damage aside from the gyro, so they need the perfect positioning. Can Miracle find it? No, gonna come out from the tree line, wants to get out, gets spotted out, and here comes the Wisp, gonna come in and ruin the Miracle train as he gets caught out. Oh, doesn't even get the RP off and he just melts. Oh, could not even get it. He in the meantime gets caught out by himself and picked off, but first departure, they're gonna lose Rax's here for sure. Gyrocopter and Disruptor not enough by themselves to repel this push.
Yeah, unfortunate there, and we saw also that he actually was killable, the Tiny there, as I was talking about it, but still I think that this is going to be a really great positioning for them. Gyrocopter soon to fall. They do end up dropping on down a nice Disruptor ulti. Queen of Pain caught in this one. Io is also going to be able to lift on up the Spirit Breaker, running away from this one, not wanting to get caught out, or Shiger gets caught, but I also have the Tiny back. If they want to relocate on back in, it does look like Wisp is going to be bringing them in just a second or two here, and at this point, this is a little bit scary. If you end up coming back in, are you going to be able to burst everybody down in time? They're bringing him in. There's going to be the Avalanche toss. Disrupt on back the Tiny. He's not going to be here for the rest of this fight. That's going to be the RP initiated at this point. Are they going to be able to find any more kills? They're looking for it. Shallow Grave on top of the mag. Jump forward yet again on the Queen of Pain. Now going to be able to Shadow Blade on up and out of there. Tiny came on back into play a little bit more. He wants to hit buildings. That's what he does. Queen of Pain ends up killing off the Disruptor. Buyback instantaneously on this one. They need to defend this last set of racks as we do end up looking at the fight recap. Huge wins across the board for Phoenix, and so much net worth on this Tiny. He has 21,000 right now. Another jump forward, Scream of Pain. That's going to be another dead Disruptor. That's a dieback on him. 64 seconds, and it looks like they might be able to take this last tier 3 tower, as they're just so strong right now.
So this is the point of no return really for First Departure. The problem with First Departure's draft is you touched on this quite a lot during the drafting phase. Where was the damage going to come from First Departure if it wasn't just going to be the Gyrocopter? Because I think putting this much emphasis onto one hero to do all the damage, it's just such a burden, because if the hero can't perform, who are you going to fall back to? You've got beautiful control with the Magnus, the Disruptor, and also just having a Spirit Breaker there for a little bit of relocation, I suppose, during the team fights. But when you don't have damage, how do you kill the heroes? You can keep them in place, that's fine. If you want to have a museum of heroes that are frozen in place, that's absolutely fine. But you need to send them to the grave at some point to get rid of them completely during the fights. So First Departure, I think it was purely just a drafting error, really. The idea was there, but up against what Phoenix had, it just didn't quite work.
Yeah, well, this does mean that we're going to be going to a Game 3 in just a second and two between Phoenix and First Departure. I'm Lyrical Dota, joined by Danny Lee Casts as well as Corrupt Drop Bear on the stats. Stick around in just a second as we move on into this final game for the night, and we'll see you guys in a second. Be careful of speakers.